offering.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kelly Russell. Welcome to the Friday group of the Teachers of God Foundation here in Amesbury, and welcome to all of you who are joining us via live stream. We love you. We're so happy to have all of you here. And a big shout out to Bill Free and Lisa Natoli and all of our friends who are walking the Camino right now over in Portugal. So hi, and love goes with you wherever you go. And so we're just so excited to be here today. So we're coming into Father's Day weekend. So the name of the talk today, and I'm going to be the speaker, is Who's Your Daddy? A look at Father's Day through A Course in Miracles, Course in Miracles style. But I have some announcements first. Okay, so next week, our lovely Nancy Fitzgerald is going to be the speaker here. And that's on the 21st, and the following week on the 28th is going to be a group teach. So be sure and check in with us for both of those exciting teachings. For those of you who are members of the presenter series or are members of the transformation room, in which case you also are members of the presenter series, we're coming up to the month of July. The cart is going to be open at the end of June for 3 days, and the speaker coming up for July, which is very exciting, is Robert Perry. And Robert Perry, for those of you who aren't familiar, is an amazing teacher. He is the editor of what we call the Purple Book, the CE edition of A Course in Miracles. And he headed up the whole operation of gathering Helen Schuckman's notes and the 45,000 words that weren't in the original version of the course. And I saw him speak at the Course in Miracles International Conference in Boston a few weeks ago, as several of you did, and he was really great. So be sure, if you're not a member of the presenter series yet, to pay attention. Either go on the website, the teachersofgod.org website, to find more information about it, or if you receive emails on it, you'll have a link to be able to join. So that's really exciting. And then we always have our 40-day program. That is something that's going on. And so if you're brand new with us and you've never done the 40-day program, or you did it and it was awesome and great, and you haven't done it in a while, I know myself, I've done it several times, and it's just always different. Even though it may be the same words, it hits you differently, just like when you're reading A Course in Miracles and you think, like, when did they ever put that in there? Because it seems like you never read that part before. So I encourage you to do that. And also, our Living in Purpose program is fantastic also. If you've never done it, it's a 6-month transformational program that will just change your life. So those are the announcements for today. So we are going to greet each other in love and have our namaste period. This is where we see the light in me honors the light in you, because the light in you and the light in me is the same light. So namaste.
Namaste, beautiful.
Namaste. I'm good.
Oh, I'm so good.
Good to see you.
So good.
Ooh, I should turn this off probably. Yeah, so we're not yelling.
Yes, so 5 months. Yes. Yes, everybody's here.
Hi, dear. Hi, namaste. What's your name? Oh, you're Lydia. Yeah, I love that name, Lydia. Hey, namaste, dancing queen. Yeah, right? I love it. You went to a body show. I saw that. You are so good. You can say now. You sing. I love how you write. You're writing. Oh, good. Oh, it's very quick. Yeah, right? Yeah, it's very good. Really? Let's try. I want to sit in front of
Everybody.
She's tired of me.
Good idea.
Yeah, but you're not
I know they are.
Okay. So we're is my thingy back on here? Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
straight up pose.
Yeah, okay. So welcome back, everybody. And so we've greeted each other in love, and we've figured out what our announcements are. We know what's coming up, and now we're going to have our lovely Therese read to us the lesson or the reading of the day from Cafe Gratitude. Thank you, Therese.
Good morning, everybody. Quote for today is, "The mind in its natural state can be compared to the sky covered by layers of clouds which hide its true nature." I guess that one was for you, Bill. Kalu Rinpoche, that's who the quote's from. Always good to remember. Back to you.
There's a little bit more.
Oh.
Do you want to read this?
Okay. This is a new gig for me, so. What miracle has happened in your life recently?
Mm-hmm.
Tell us one.
No pressure.
I finally fixed my bicycle tire.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Therese. That's a good one, isn't it? The mind in its natural state can be compared to the sky covered by layers of clouds which hide its true nature. And isn't that really true? Like every day we wake up, right? We wake up with the blue sky, and then, how many minutes are we into our day before like the first cloud comes along, right? And so what is ours to do is to remember that we're the sky, and to just remember this is just a cloud. Because we tend to get all wrapped up in the clouds and, tangled up in them, and that's all we can see. And really, as the Course in Miracles talks about in that section where he's talking about going through the clouds to the light, he just talks about, hey, he's got our hand and we're just feeling the clouds, feeling them wispy on our cheeks, feeling us go through them, and knowing that we're going toward the light and it's getting brighter and brighter and brighter as we keep going, right? So that's really what our journey is. And I think it's so fitting that it talks about what miracle has happened in your life recently, because my talk today is in honor of upcoming Father's Day this weekend. My talk today is Who's Your Daddy? And so I want to talk about the concept of fatherhood and the concept that we have, that we identify with we identify with the whole idea of fatherhood. For millennia, who one's father was super important. It was more important than who your mother was. You carried your father's name, except for maybe Jesus and Mary. Although, we're going to get into that, who the real father was there. The whole idea of the identification of the father, having the father's name, having a father born in wedlock versus out of wedlock, so that whether you were a child whose father acknowledged you, or whether you were considered a child since you were born out of wedlock, and there were names for that. So the whole idea of fatherhood itself in earthly terms has a lot of separation around it, doesn't it? And some people, I've been thinking about this because some people in the world, we're celebrating Father's Day, and everything's about Father's Day right now, and all the commercials are about Father's Day and everything. You see big signs in the stores, Father's Day, and what are you doing for Father's Day? And I got asked that like 3 times yesterday. And some people in the world may be in a situation where they aren't celebrating Father's Day. They may not be celebrating Father's Day because their birth father, their earthly father, has made his transition. That's the case for myself. It may be that they don't know who their birth father is, which is the case for some people that I know. They may know who their father is, and they don't get along with them, or they're estranged, or they don't have anything to do with them, and so they're not celebrating Father's Day. So the idea of Father's Day in earthly terms has got some separation around it just from there, because there's people that are celebrating Father's Day, there's people that aren't celebrating it. There's people that are celebrating Father's Day who absolutely adore their birth dads, their earthly dads, their adoptive dads, their stepdads, their fathers-in-law, their father figures, their husbands, their kids who have had kids. And they're celebrating, and they're feting, and it's great, and there's cookouts, and there's ball games, and all of that, and it's great. But again, so there are people who are celebrating, and for people for whom it's a happy time, and there's people for whom it's not a celebration, or it's not really a happy time, or it brings up painful memories. And so Father's Day in earthly terms, to me, seems kind of like a separation idea. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't celebrate it. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with it, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with acknowledging the dudes in our lives that are earthly fathers, right? If we want to do that, it's awesome and it's great. And I know a lot of dads, and there's dads in this room, and it's fantastic. But whenever there's anything where we're looking at something in a concept or something that's going on in the world, and we see that it's not the same for everybody, then it is a separation idea. And that's what this world really is. What the Course in Miracles has to say about, one of the things that it has to say about fatherhood is that the creation of I shouldn't say creation, the making of this world, the making up of this world, which was made by the collective ego, is our attempt to be our own father, right? So in the very beginning, when we had this tiny mad idea that we just forgot to laugh at, and we had this little idea about, I wonder what it would be like if I just went out on my own. And again, that idea was over in a nanosecond, but in that nanosecond, we fell into this dream. It's like the Bible says that Adam fell into a deep sleep, and it doesn't say anywhere about how he woke up. Right, so we're in, he's the original earthly father in at least in mythological terms, right? And so we go into this big sleep. We have the Big Bang happens, and now we're all these millions and billions and cajillions of separate entities and separate beings and separate cells and separate everything, and we form separate solar systems and separate beings and separate, just everything is separate, right? But the whole idea that started that was the ego mind saying, you can be your own father. You can be God. You don't have to, you can be the boss of you. You can be the boss of your whole world, and it'll be great. and because we're in this guilty place of thinking that we separated from God, thinking that we rejected God, thinking that we rejected our Father, even though we didn't, and even though that was just a big lie of the ego and it never happened and it was a whole big myth. But when you're in it and you're in this dream and you don't know that, you're consumed by guilt, right? And so we think, okay, that's a great idea. I'm going to go where you said where you could go, where I could be my own father, and I could be God, and I don't have to worry, and I can hide. Okay, so that's kind of like that's the original. How did we get here? And so just like this world is a replication. Everything that happens in this world, it's kind of like the ego's version of trying to make it like our original home, So we're always trying to. There's a part of us that is trying to join with each other, right? Because we're always trying to get back to that oneness. That's why we join in relationships. That's the part of us that is God. Is that we're joining with each other. We're joining in relationships. We want to have partnerships. We want to have friendships. We want to get married. We want to, and that is the God part of us, wanting to join and wanting to get back to oneness, right? And then we've got the ego mind who is constantly focusing on the separation piece of it. So I wanted to read what the Course in Miracles has to say, because this talk obviously is about who's your daddy, meaning who is really our father, and then how can we regard the other fathers in our lives, those who were our birth fathers, our adoptive fathers, our stepfathers, those who are father figures to us, and those who we are in partnership with or have given earthly birth to, who are fathers now, and how can we regard them, as well as how do we regard who our real father is? Because if we're all one, and the Course in Miracles, I don't think there's any other concept that the Course in Miracles hammers more, bang, 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 than we're all one, right? So if we are all one, then nobody has it better than anybody else. And one of the areas where we compare ourselves to each other, because we compare ourselves to each other in a lot of different ways, and that's a separation idea. That's a way of feeling separate, is that we compare ourselves how we're different. And one of the ways that we compare ourselves to how we're different is the idea of our fathers, right? My father is better than your father. My father's a superhero. My father's a superhero too. No, he isn't. Because there can only be one superhero, and that's my father. And my father could beat up your father. And when we're little kids, there's a lot about the father. And so, if we're in a situation where we don't have a father present, an earthly father present, or we're not having that kind of experience, and we're having a different experience that is painful, then that is automatically, we don't feel joined with other people. We automatically feel separate, or there's something wrong with us, or we're not as lucky as other people. We don't have that kind of father. We might not have a father who plays with us all the time, or a father who takes us out for ice cream, or a father who has a manner of providing for us so that we get to go on vacations all the time. And I understand that mothers are all up into that too, but this is Father's Day, so that's what we're talking about now. So we're not dissing moms, but it's the focus on Father's Day. So depending on what kind of a situation that we were born into in this world, has a lot of governance over how we regard the idea of father, and how we regard the idea of sort of what we got to have as a father, and whether it was good or whether it was bad. We assign everything in this world all the meaning that it has for us. And everything that happens, we interpret, and it's our perception that causes how we feel about it. And so we have an interpretation of what our situation was, our earthly father situation was. And then we go on from there. And I mean, I'm a therapist, and I hear a lot that goes back to childhood and a lot that goes back to fatherhood, and my father wasn't there, or my father, was there, but he was abusive, or my father was an alcoholic, or my father was awesome and he was great, and my father, took us places and did fun things with us, or my father taught me how to fix cars, or, use tools, or my father taught me how to cook, or whatever it was. And so that has a lot of, we end up forming our concept of what a father is, and what a good father is, what a not great father is. And we often too, that will govern, for those of us who are oriented toward finding male partners, that often has a lot to do with the partners that we find in the world too, because then we are always trying to work out whatever that stuff was from childhood, right? And we've all heard the term daddy issues. And so the whole father thing, the earthly father thing, kind of has a lot attached to it. It's pretty loaded. And yet the truth is that we all have the same father. That our earthly fathers are actually not our real fathers. And it doesn't mean that I want you to go to the Father's Day celebration you're going to go to and be like, you're not my real father. Or start telling people that, you learned from A Course in Miracles that your dad's not really your father. And, ego mind would love for you to do that. Like, take it completely out of context, and that's not what we're talking about. But the truth is that if we are all one, and if we are all brothers, then we have one Father. God is our Father. And if God is our Father, that means that we are all the same. And that means we all have the same opportunity. It means not one of us doesn't have a good father and somebody else has a shitty father. It doesn't mean that one of us has a deadbeat dad and another of us has a really generous father. There's no more dichotomy there, right? There's only one truth, and the one truth is that we all have the same Father, and that our Father loves us all equally. But he doesn't have favorites. He doesn't punish one of us and, give good stuff to another one of us. He doesn't do anything for one of us that he doesn't do for all of us. And that's a weird concept for us. We're not used to thinking of it like that. We're so used to, in this world, making comparisons. I mean, all day long, it's comparisons about stuff. And so the whole father issue is really, can't escape from that. So for us to be able to remember that our fathers, our earthly fathers, they're in the role of our fathers. And however we feel about them, who they really are is our brothers. And for people who have had difficulty with their fathers, and I know, as I said, I'm a therapist. I talk to a lot of people. Some people have had very, very difficult issues with their fathers in the earthly realm. And to be able to look at our fathers as our brothers, that we are all the same. Our fathers in this world are the same as us. Our fathers in this world are beloved creations of God. No matter what they appear to be doing in this world is a dream. And we have to remember that because it can seem really real at times. It can feel like shit gets really real. It can feel like it's not that cool sometimes, and that it can feel painful. And at other times, it can feel awesome, and it can feel loving and exciting and close and adventuresome and yummy and terrific and ecstatic. And but that's the thing, is that this is a world of duality. So it's, if we're focused on how I'm feeling in the world from day to day, because of a reflection of how the world is treating me, how the people in the world are treating me day to day, then we are going to have that roller. It's going to be a big ass roller coaster ride, right? Because one day it's going to be great and I'm up here, and the next day it's going to be terrible and I'm down here. And today I love my dad, and tomorrow I hate my dad. And if you ever remember either being 2 years old or like 14, that's what can happen, is it can turn on kind of a dime like that. And that's not the real world. That's duality. And duality by nature, in the world of God, in the world of heaven, in the world where we really are, there is no duality. The duality does not exist. There is one world, one oneness, one beingness, and it is always, always awesome, and always the same, and always blissful, and always peaceful. And we are always loved more than we could even imagine. Like if we could imagine, if we could really feel, there is a part in the Course in Miracles that talks about revelation. And revelation is where it is a one-way communication. It is not a two-way communication. It's a one-way communication where our consciousness is aligned enough and open enough to where we actually receive a communication from God. And for that moment that it lasts, we feel what it actually feels like to be at one with God. And for people that have experienced it, I have not. For people who have experienced it, they say it changes you, and you're just never the same, because you realize what there actually is waiting for all of us when we have sufficiently undone the ego to a point where we can actually feel it. But it's what the truth is for all of us. It's going back to that idea of the sky and then the clouds. Clouds are sufficiently parted and sufficiently dissolved by the light, and we actually can see through them. The clouds that are in our own consciousness, our clouds of judgment and our clouds of feeling not good enough, or our clouds of criticism of our brother, or whatever our clouds are. They're sort of our clouds of our negative thinking. When we can undo those significantly enough, revelation will be our reality. That's where we're going. That's where we're headed. And so that's the good news. To look at fatherhood, like, I'm a Star Wars fan. Any Star Wars fans in here? Yep. Yeah. Cool. So, sort of. So, well, the idea of the Force, right? Like, the Force is always with us. The Force is with you. To me, the Force is God. And so it's just that realization that with the force of God with you, you can do anything, right? And Luke Skywalker is, he's bebopping along in life, and he, has this idea about his father, Anakin, and he, his father was a hero to him and all of that. And then he has this moment where he finds out, Luke, I am your father, and it's Darth Vader, right? And he's like, oh my God, like, my father is like the worst dude in the universe. Like, I just went from thinking my father was somebody great, and therefore I'm somebody great, or I'm somebody okay anyway, to my father is this, like, evil emperor, and what does that have to say about me? And now I have to question my whole life, and I have to question who I am, and I have to question everything that I ever thought was true. All because of this, finding out that this dude isn't who we thought he was, right? And then, of course, he goes to, sorry for the spoiler alert in case anybody hasn't ever seen a Star Wars, I highly recommend it. But, over time, he realizes the truth about his father. And he realized that his father just got sucked into the dark side for a while, right? And what is the dark side? All the dark side is the ego part of our minds. That's all the dark side is it's just wavering off the path of remembering who we are as beloved creations of God, and we just get sucked into the ego's dark side for a little while, and we believe that we're somebody different. And that's what happened to Darth Vader, is he just got seduced by the ego mind into believing that he was somebody that he really wasn't. And when his body is dying at the end, and Luke is able to remove his mask and look into his father's face and forgive him and see him for who he really is, see him as, we're not separate, and you are my father, and I love you. I mean, for people that just think Star Wars is like a bunch of like battles and, between like entities and beings in the universe, it really isn't. It has a really cool message. And I think that whole father message is one of the best things that there is about it. So I was, how I always like to go to the dictionary, right, and figure out what stuff means. So I wanted to see, I had to, when I looked up father in the dictionary, and I just think this is so indicative of how the world thinks. How many definitions do you think I had to go down before I found God under father in the dictionary? It was all about a male, and a male, person who has, like fathered a child in human form. Basically, that's not what it said, but it was all about being a father in the world. And so, but I did finally get down to a couple of definitions, one related to another in a way suggesting that of father to child. Okay. And one that originates or institutes, or source. And I prefer source, but and I know that there are people who object to the male pronouns used in A Course in Miracles, so the use of father as opposed to mother, the use of he all the time instead of she. And really, you can do whatever you want with A Course in Miracles. I mean, if you want to take the time to read A Course in Miracles and substitute every single time it says father for mother, or for he, she for he, or whatever, it's fine. It doesn't really matter, because it's the meaning behind father. And the meaning behind father is just creator, right? It's a way of designating who our creator is. And I think that the word father is used by Jesus, because that's what Jesus when he was walking the earth as a man, that's what he called him. I think he thought of him as my father, like my parent, my advisor. I mean, Jesus was talking to him all day long and asking him for guidance and sort of talking stuff out with them. And it doesn't mean that he wouldn't be doing that if he called him mother. So that whole thing doesn't really matter. But cultivating the relationship with our Father, cultivating the relationship with God as our Father, that is really what we are here to do. We are here to remember who we are as beloved children of that Father, and we're here to remember that every single person in the world is our brother, including our earthly fathers. So for those of you who are celebrating your father this weekend on Father's Day, or celebrating a father in your life, rock on, and it's awesome. And I have nothing but admiration for the fathers in this world, particularly when they love what they're doing and they are able to see themselves and those that they are fathers to in the light, and they're able to come from that place. And for those fathers who aren't able to do that, and whose vision is clouded by the ego and by their own self-hatred, to be able to see them as calling for love and being able to be grateful to them for being our brothers anyway. So to go back to the dictionary, so father as a verb means to beget, right? So we're all God's begotten son. We're all God's only begotten son. He didn't have like one that's separate from us. It's all of us. To be the founder, producer, or author of, to accept responsibility for, and to fix the origin of. So that's the meaning of father that I really wanted to just embrace, is that God is our source. God is who originated us. What the Course in Miracles says is the only difference, like when you see a dad and you see them walking with their little kid, and particularly if their child is a boy, but even if not, and you ever see the father where the kid looks exactly like the father? It's like a little mini me, and you're just like, oh my God, you're the spitting image, right? He's like a little mini me. Well, guess what? We are all God's mini me. We are. The Course in Miracles says that there's no difference between us and God, except for the authorship, that God created us. We did not create him. Otherwise, it's like, you cut off a piece of God and it's us. You cut off a piece of us and it's God. It's the same thing. It's this, if it were a substance, which it's not, because this world is fake and we're not real and we're not bodies, we're just light. But the quality of light that God makes up God is the same quality of light that makes up us. That's who our Father is. We are children of the light. We are children of love. That's who our Father is. So A Course in Miracles in chapter 11 says, your place, it's a part that talks about your place in God's mind. Either God or the ego is insane. Fair enough. If you will examine the evidence on both sides fairly, you will realize that this must be true. Neither God nor the ego proposes a partial thought system. It's one or the other. You can't have both. Each is internally consistent, but they are diametrically opposed in all respects, so that partial allegiance is impossible. So partial allegiance is impossible. So if you're seeing the ego as your father, and by the ego as your father, I'm meaning just the thought system of the world as your father versus God as your father. It's one or the other. You can't mount two horses and you can't bend two bows. You can certainly see your earthly father in the role of earthly father and have all the love and respect for him that you do. But your father is either God or the ego thought system, and it can't be both. So nothing alive is fatherless, for life is creation. Therefore, your decision is always an answer to the question, who is my father? And you will be faithful to the father you choose. So if we made the ego, then the ego cannot have made us, right? It's just logic. So we're either choosing every day, the father, the ego as our father, or we're choosing God as our father. So if we're choosing the ego as our father, what do we do? What does that look like in the world? If the ego is our father, how do we behave? Judgment. So if the ego is our father, if we are embracing the ego thought system, and that means that we are seeing that as our father, our originator, where we came from, what we're identifying with, we're going to be in judgment. We're going to feel separate. We're going to be in fear. Somebody over here said something? Unsafe. Unprotected. Suspicious at best and vicious at worst, right? we're going to feel all those, whatever all of those emotions are. I mean, I could add to those, anger, jealousy, resentment, guilt, shame, sadness, doubt, all of what we consider in this world to be the negative emotions we experience when we are choosing the ego as our father. When we are seeing ourselves as children of the ego. Because in order for us to believe that about our brothers, we have to believe it about ourselves. There's no such, the Course in Miracles says, there's no such thing as seeing a brother in a way that you don't see yourself. And that's what we fool ourselves into thinking. We fool ourselves into thinking with our projection that, oh, I feel that way about him, but like, I think I'm good. Like that person is, that person is a jerk, but I'm good. That person is a liar, but I'm good. That woman's a bitch, but I'm good. But the thing is, you can't, there's no way that you can do that, because everyone in the world is a reflection of us. So any way that we see our brothers is the way that we see ourselves. We might be in denial about that. We might think that that's not true. We might be unconscious to it, but just because we're in denial of something or unconscious to it doesn't make it true. Right? Unfortunately, sometimes. So my experience for a long time with my father had a lot of really awesome qualities, and he was also an alcoholic. And for many, many years, like most of my childhood, maybe from not when I was really young, but most of my childhood and into my teen years and into my 20s, and he died when I was about 31, I had a really negative identification with my father. He was not a mean alcoholic. He never raised a hand to me. He was not physically abusive or verbally abusive or any of that. I just made meaning out of his being an alcoholic. We make meaning in the world. We assign everything all the meaning that it has to us, right? And we give everything its interpretation from our perception. So I made all this meaning out of the fact that my father was an alcoholic, and I thought that meant that he was making my mother unhappy, and I thought that meant that he was making my mother not want to stay home with me and wanted to work a third shift job. And I blame my father for like everything as a child and as a teen and into my 20s. And I carried it for a long time. And it wasn't until I got into A Course in Miracles that I was able to see my father as my brother and seeing him as my projection in this world. If this world is a dream, then anything that is appearing to happen to me in this dream, I'm creating in my mind, including my father being an alcoholic and all of the blah, 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 blah that went along with it, which all of it is not real. The truth of the matter is that my father, my earthly father, was and always will be my brother. And when I was able to understand what A Course in Miracles was saying, because the first time I read The Course in Miracles, I was just like, what? I got enough of it so that it hooked me in. So it wasn't completely foreign. It hooked me in, and I kept seeing like every third sentence would be like, oh my God, that's so true. I love this book. And then I'd be like, what the fuck does that sentence mean? Like right the next one after it. So, it was sort of like reading it and getting maybe every third or fourth sentence. And I see a lot of heads nodding. So I'm glad that I wasn't just like a Course in Miracles moron, But what happens though is the more you read it and the more you undo the ego, the more that you choose with who your true father is rather than the ego father. And when I say that ego father, I do not mean who your earthly father is. So please don't misunderstand that. I mean, when I say the ego father, I mean choosing with the ego thought system of the world as being our identification. But the more that we undo that, the more that we are able to practice what the Course in Miracles is teaching, the more we're able to do the lessons, the more that we're able to practice the Course in Miracles version of forgiveness, and we undo the ego, then when we go back and read the Course in Miracles, I don't know about you guys, but I'm constantly finding sentences in there that I'm like, when did they put that in? Like, and it's not that I've never read it. I mean, technically, because I've read the Course in Miracles a few times, but it's kind of like, you're reading it and it's kind of like blah, 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 sentence. Okay, I'm not a body, I'm free, I'm still as God created me, and blah, 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 blah. Only love is real and nothing else can be threatened. And, whatever you're able to take in at a certain time sticks, and everything else just kind of hits your forehead and like falls off, which is why it's a good idea, I think, to keep reading it or keep studying it or keep listening to whatever teachers you resonate with, or, keep sort of immersing yourself in it in different ways, or going to a Course in Miracles group, or coming here, or whatever it is that can keep you in the thought system and keep you swimming around in it. Because just know that the more that you do that, the more layers of the ego will be undone, and the more you'll choose God as your Father more consistently, rather than choosing the ego thought system. So then we go back to the Course in Miracles, and it says, only if you accept the fatherhood of God will you have anything, because his fatherhood gave you everything. That is why to deny him is to deny yourself. So, sometimes, and I know I do this too, I slide into this sometimes when I'm all boo-boo kitty about something, and I can't like make my life work, or I can't like find a place to live, or like something's happening with my money, or I'm going to fight with my boyfriend, or whatever it is. And I'm on like, God, like, why won't you give this to me? Like, why won't you help me? Like, why aren't you watching? When I do my little spiritual tantrums, sometimes it's with Jesus, but then God gets in there too. It's kind of like fighting with like my brother and my father. And it's just like, why is nobody helping me? Why is nobody paying attention? And I'm sinking and you're not helping me. And, you're ignoring me, and you're helping this one, and you're helping that one, and they get to have this, and they get to have that, and I'll come. And, really, that's, is anybody, right? Yeah. And that's really, that's obviously, in case you don't know, that's really that's when we're identifying with the ego as our father, right?
The universe gives you more of that.
What's that?
And then the universe gives you more.
And then the universe gives you more of that when you're in that place. However, what I do, because I do get in that place, and what I notice when I get to that place, then I go, I'm sorry. I forgive myself. And I don't say I'm sorry like I'm guilty. It's more like I don't really feel like that. I just had I forgot who my father was. I had a temporary ego tantrum. I identified with the wrong father, and I'm forgiving myself. I remember that this all, whatever is appearing to happen, is just my own creation, and it's coming from a place of fear. It's coming from a place because I want to see this, because I don't want God to be true. When I'm seeing crappiness in the world, it's because I want my version of the world to be true. That's true for all of us. And so then I go into my forgiveness, and I go into, my gratitude, and, you go into using the tools that can raise your vibration back up there and remind yourself of who you are. But it's, hopefully I don't do that as much as I once did. Although I will say, look at having this whole interesting experience I've been having lately of not knowing where I was going to be living in another few weeks or whatever has really kind of brought stuff to the surface. So it's been really interesting. So, okay. So moving along in A Course in Miracles. So now, this is from chapter 8. The other that I read, I don't know if I mentioned it. The other was from chapter 11, the passages that I read. This is from chapter 8. The will of the Father and that of the Son are one by their extension. Their extension is the result of their oneness, their unity, holding their unity by extending their joint will. This is perfect creation by the perfectly created in union with the perfect creator. The father must give fatherhood to his sons because his own fatherhood must be extended outward. You who belong in God have the holy function of extending his fatherhood by placing no limits upon it. Let the Holy Spirit teach you how to do this, for you will know what it means of God himself. When you meet anyone, remember it is a holy encounter, and as you see him, you will see yourself. As you treat him, you will treat yourself. And as you think of him, you will think of yourself. So never forget this, for in him you will find yourself or lose sight of yourself. Whenever two sons of God meet, they are given another chance at salvation. Do not leave anyone without giving salvation to him and thus receiving it yourself. I am always there with you in remembrance of you. So extending God's fatherhood. So that's what our job is to extend God's fatherhood. And that doesn't mean go have a bunch of kids. You know, if you want to have a bunch of kids, that's fine. But that's not the way to extend God's fatherhood, because again, that'd be a separation idea. Well, what about those of us who aren't having kids? You know, what about people who can't have kids or choose not to, or whatever it is? So it doesn't mean go have a bunch of kids in the world's version of it. It means extending our fatherhood means I'm love, my father is love, fatherhood is love, and I'm extending love to you. And that's my only job, is to extend love to my brothers. You know, I'm writing a blog that's coming out next week, and it's all about defining what the hell the Course in Miracles means when it talks about seeing people as calling for love. Because, you know, it talks about everything's either an expression for love or a call for love. But, like, what's a call for love? And what does it look like? And what do we do about it? And how do we respond and all that? So that's coming up next week. But that's what I mean, is that so in the world, extending our fatherhood means seeing everything anyone does, and responding with love, seeing it as love, seeing it as an expression of love, or seeing it as a call for love. And a call for love means a calling out for help, a calling out for healing. And it comes in all kinds of forms that don't look like love, right? It comes in really good camouflage sometimes. It looks really ugly and really gnarly. And it isn't. That is the ego's mask that the ego would put on it so that we don't see each other with love, right? So that we won't extend love. Like, the ego doesn't even know what love is. It's like, love? What? What's that? I don't get it. You know, and I mean, that's kind of how the ego walks around. It doesn't have any idea what love is. It has ideas about what it defines love is in this world. Right? It defines as what love is. So things like attachment, things like need, things like you will never leave me or abandon me, or, you know, you have to act this way in order to prove that you love me. So love looks a certain way to us in the world, that the parameters and the conditions that we put on it in the world are the ego's definition of the world. So that's when we're listening with our ego father. Right, is when we think of love like that, and we think of people as needing to behave in a certain way. And so when we have judgment about anyone in the world, including our earthly fathers, well, you were supposed to behave this way. You know, we have this whole list of what do we think of fathers are supposed to do in the world. We think they're supposed to provide. We think they are supposed to teach us. They're supposed to love us. They're supposed to protect us. They're supposed to be there for us. They're supposed to, you know, whatever anybody thinks a father is supposed to do. And yet, and if they're not doing that, then they're not being a good father, right? When the reality is, they're just being a brother. They're just being our brother. And if they're doing things that we would consider to be crappy fathering in the world, that is defined as they are calling out for love. And so they are deserving of our loving of them, and a remembrance that they might be my earthly father, but we have the same Father. They and I have the same Father. That is really what helped me in my healing with my father, is practicing forgiveness and realizing that there was not forgiving him for what he ever did, not forgiving him for being an alcoholic, or, I remember when I would say to people, I was like going through the painful part to get to my present. So, oh, what was your father like? He was an alcoholic. Instead of, he was all these other things too. My earthly father was a lot of other things. And that was one aspect was that he was addicted to alcohol. It certainly wasn't the whole of him. And it certainly didn't ruin my life. And shame on me if I said that it did, or I let it color my view that it ruined my life, because nobody is capable of ruining your life except you. Our lives, what if we are able to choose love, and we are able to practice forgiveness, meaning forgiving this world as a dream and not seeing it as real, and being able to rise above whatever reflection of the ego the world is showing us, then our lives will be great. So our lives being great is in our hands, and all it takes for us to do is to choose the right Father, to remember who our Father is. So as I was preparing to do this talk, and I was thinking about just the concept of expectation. Expectation is what makes us suffer. Expectation leads to disappointment. And I don't mean expectation of good stuff happening. I absolutely believe in having the expectation that my Father is my source, and my source will provide whatever I need at whatever time, in whatever manner, through whatever channel, and whatever person, and whatever, circumstance that is going to be for my highest and best, and that of all concern. It doesn't mean that my source and my Father is going to provide everything exactly the way that I think it should go, because that's me doing my tunnel vision about, this is how I think it should go because this is how much I can see. And, he's like, no, but then if you have that like that, then this can't happen, and this can't happen, and this can't happen, and this can't happen for all my other kids who I love just as much as I love you. So why don't you just let me handle it, because I can see everything, because I'm all omnipotent and everything. And so I will make it happen the way that it needs to happen for everybody, and you will not lose. Now, when we're choosing with our ego Father, we feel like we have to control it all, and we have to make it all happen, because we're just have this fear that, if I don't control this, it's all going to fall apart, and it's all going to go to shit, and it's all going to be terrible for me, and I'm going to suffer. Actually, the opposite is true. If you hold on to things like that, and you try to force your will, you can't really force your will, but you try to force your will, and you try to make stuff happen the way that you think that you should, thinking with your ego Father, then things aren't going to work out well for you, because that's the nature of the ego world, is that things don't work out, right? And as soon as one thing does work out, what happens? Something else starts not working out, right? Because that is just the nature of the world. The nature of the world is seek and do not find. What's going on? Oh, is something making noise?
It's a little bit. I just didn't know if maybe.
Is my earring?
Because it doesn't look like it's this. I didn't know.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Is that better? Sorry, you guys.
I think every once in a while when you
I'm hitting. I know I do that. I talk with my hands. It's like I'm not even Italian. Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, if there are blasts in your ear and stuff like that, especially for you live streamers, it's the ego. Andy said it's just the ego. It's the ego Father screwing around with you. So there you have it. Yeah. So going back to thinking with our real father versus our earthly father, if we can let go of that control, right? If we can let go. So I'm going to tell you a story because a lot of people have been asking me about this. I went to I did a blog about maybe 3 weeks or a month ago. I did a blog about how I had kept this chronic thought in my mind for like 3 years that I wanted to move to the Portsmouth area. And I love Portsmouth and I love being in that space and I love it up there. And I go to the beach and I take salsa lessons up there and I eat in the restaurants and I go to the bars and I, love Portsmouth. And so what happens after 11 years is that my landlords, whom I love and are the most awesome landlords in the history of the world, decided they needed to reclaim their space after me living there for 11 years, and I now have to move. And I had this big old tantrum because I'm not ready, and this is not what I wanted, and this is not what I meant, and I don't have time for this right now, and I don't have money for it right now, and how could you do this, and blah, 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 blah. So I wrote the big blog about it. And a bunch of people at the conference, including many of you, came up and asked me about it. Did you find a place to live yet? How's it going? I have people asking me about it. And I just keep saying the same thing that my friend John Warnsdorfer, who you guys remember from being in this group, and many of you may know him. And he's on the Camino right now with Bill and Lisa. And he wrote, when I did a Facebook Live and posted that blog, he wrote and said, your new home is in the quantum field and it will show up in your awareness when the divine time is right. And I was like, rock on, John, thank you very much. And so that's what my answer's been to everybody. And my sister's like, I know you gave me some woo-woo answer about like divine and timing and quantum something, but like, have you found a place to live yet? So, and this is about trusting my Father. This is about trusting my God, my Father. So I just decided I'm just going to stay in trust. I'm going to stay in trust because freaking out, which I did a fair amount of, wasn't working. There wasn't like a new house that was showing up on my porch right after I freaked out and like had a big tantrum. And I would go to Portsmouth and look at places, and none of them were right, and I just didn't want to live in any of them, and that wasn't really working out. And so I just kept trusting, and I just kept trusting. So when I was at the Course in Miracles conference, I just kept letting go of it and just like letting go. And Lisa Natoli did a great teaching at the Course conference, and it was called The Healing Power of Fuck It. And I was just like, fuck it. I'm just going to let go of it. I'm just going to let go. I'm just going to trust. I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't have to know, but I'm trusting that God wants me to live somewhere, and probably in the Portsmouth area, because it was such a strong desire for me, desire of the Father, right? So I'm at the Course conference, and my phone rings, and it's John, and he says, I'm going to be moving, and so is a friend of mine. He says, I've got this place, and he describes the place, and it's not right for me. He says, my friend Catherine, she pipes up and says, she was in the car too. I've got a place, I'm moving also. I've got a place that's available. My place is precious, she says. It's adorable. And I'm like, oh, good. I'm like, really? Uh-huh. Where is it? Elliott, Maine. Oh, really? Okay, we all know a few people who live in Elliott, Maine, right across the river from Portsmouth, a mile down from the marina. And so I go last Sunday, and I go look at it, and it's ridiculous. It's so precious. It's so cute. It's so adorable. And it just was my house. And so she gives me the name of the landlord, and I call him, and there's no call back, and I call him the next day, and there's no call back, and I text him, and there's no call back, and now I'm like, oh my God, and then I don't know whether I can afford it, and I don't know what he's going to charge, and then maybe he's got somebody else and so I continue to look online, I continue to call places, no, nothing's right. then we were supposed to speak a couple days ago. He finally texted me. I've been out of town. I'm having trouble with my phone. We have a new phone number too that Catherine didn't know about. Gave me the new phone. She gave me the new phone number. So finally we spoke yesterday morning, and I'm moving in August 1st. So very happy about that. Thank you. And I will tell you that it was just staying in trust. It was trusting my Father. It was not trusting the ego father, the ego thought system of the world that wanted me to panic, that wanted me to freak out on a regular basis, that wanted me to be in scarcity and lack, that wanted me to think that it was never going to happen, that I was going to have to settle for some place that I would not be comfortable, that I would not be able to do my work, that I would not be able to expand. You know, the place that I'm leaving, I did a lot of transition work. It was a place that I became a therapist, I became a minister, I became a coach, I found Teachers of God, I started my Course in Miracles group, I had many years in one relationship, and then I started a relationship that I'm still in that place. So it was a place of transition for me, a place of growing. But I need a place of expansion, and that's what this next place is going to be for me. So it's just been such an amazing journey of trusting my Father, of knowing my Father knows what's best for me, knowing it wasn't inside downtown Portsmouth. It was outside of Portsmouth. It was a quieter little hamlet, but it's literally like 5 minutes to drive into Portsmouth. And it's bucolic, and it's magical, and it's exactly what I need. Not to mention, it's everything that was on the list the intention list that I made when I first started looking. And it's the only place I found that was on that, I had everything on that intention list. So just trusting our Father, trusting God. It's almost ineffable that the way that it worked, and it is for the best of all concerned, because it's for the best of the landlord, it's for the best of Catherine, it's for the best of John, it's for the best of my landlords who need to reclaim my space and whatever they're going to do to it or with it. And it just, when you let go and let God work it out, it works out better than you could have ever imagined when you trust your Father. So I want to do a quick meditation. And I want to thank everybody, too, and everybody online for holding the vision for me and for really sending your energy to it, because I could feel it. And and those of you who bolstered me when I was faltering, I really appreciate that, too. So just invite you to close your eyes for a moment. We're just going to do a quick meditation. So just breathing in peace, breathing out love, and seeing yourself standing in a beautiful light. And this light is warm and peaceful. It is shimmering and healing and soft. And it is soothing and uplifting and joyful. And this light is all around you. It's wrapped all around you. And it infuses you. It is illuminating everything in your field of vision. And this is the light of God. And as you stand in this light, you are holding the hand of your brother and elder, guide and way shower. And an altar appears before you. And this is God's altar. And on this altar, you are meant to place everything that disturbs your peace in any way. Anything that has to do with making the world your Father. On this altar, you release the world and the ego as being your Father. Any relationship issue, any financial concern, any bodily problem, any situation, anything that disturbs your peace is of the world. And you're going to release all of that and just lay it on the altar. You're relinquishing the world as your Father. And as you're laying these things on the altar, they will be your gifts to God. They will be your gifts to your actual Father, who will transform them and return them to you in a manner that is for your highest and best good and that of all concerned, because he loves all of his children equally and wholly and forever and ever. And so as you watch this altar of light recede and go into the light of God, merge with the light of God, you then step into the light of God, holding the hand of your guide. And in this light is everyone that you have ever known and ever loved and has ever known and loved you, past, present, or future. Whether they appear to be alive in this world or whether they have made their transition from it does not matter. Everyone is here. There is no one missing. There is nothing lacking. Everything is here. There's nothing to wish for. There's nothing to want. There's no scarcity. There's no one to miss. There is only everything and everyone. There is only peace and contentment and joy and fulfillment and love and bliss. And it is from this place that you speak to your Father. Father, I love you. Thank you for extending yourself and loving me into being. Thank you for creating me to be exactly like you in your image, with all of the characteristics and qualities that you are. Thank you for taking care of me. Thank you for providing for me, for being my one source and giving me everything. Just as the wave is always part of the ocean and the ray is always part of the sun, I know that I am always part of you and my brothers, for we are one. And I join with you and I commune with you as my Father. Thank you. I love you. So as you start to slowly bring your awareness back from the real world where you never left with your Father, back to the world where you think you are. Remember that you can come back here anytime, that there will be a day when you will never be aware of anything but this world, that world, ever again. This world will disappear for you. And in the meantime, to remember that all prayers are answered, that God provides, our Father provides everything that we need in the manner that is for our highest and best good and that of all concerned. And so pay attention as in the coming days and weeks, maybe even hours, that solutions, inspirations, ideas, helpful people, situations will present themselves to you. And you will realize that those are your answered prayers, that those are your communication from your Father. That is your Father taking care of you. And that when you let go, and when you let Him do it for you, and He will tell you what your part of it is. But when you let go of needing it to be your way and allow Him to do His work through you, your life will be transformed and it will be better than you ever thought it could be. Happy Father's Day. I love you. Namaste. Thank you, everybody. You can bring yourselves back to we were done. Yeah. Are we not done? Sorry. I'm sorry. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't. I'm sorry about that. But sorry, I temporarily went off there for a second. We're going to form a circle. We're going to pray us out. Yeah. Sorry about that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So I would just like to, as we close the circle up, I would just like to point out that there is a love box in the bookstore.
Come this way a little bit, you guys.
For those of us that are here in earthly form in this room. And then there is also a donation button on where you're watching from live streamers. And we do pay for this space to be able to offer these teachings and this meeting every day. So your generosity and donations are really very much appreciated. So we're going to say the prayer of tithes and offerings. Divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Father, thank you for creating us. Thank you for blessing us with all of the earthly fathers in the world and with whatever they have taught us in whatever way they have taught us, for whatever they have done with us and for us. And thank you for our being able to express our love to them, our love for you to them and through them, and seeing them as calling for love if we're not able to see them expressing it. And so it is. Thank you. Amen. Thanks, everybody.